Lesson 13 has 3 parts, and this lesson we'll be working with multiple symbols of inclusion. We'll do a little bit more on order of operations, and then we'll also work some more with products of signed numbers. So in part A, it's about multiple symbols of inclusion, and I kind of introduced this a little bit in lesson 12. And what you always do with this is you work the innermost set of parentheses first. You work those operations, and then you just kind of start working outward and outward and outward. Let's just go ahead and start with the practice problem. Now, look at that problem and just think about that for a second. Are you ever going to need to know how to do that problem in real life? No, probably not. So obviously that's not the point of doing this problem, is so that you could maybe do a problem with all these parentheses and symbols in it later on. What a problem like this does is it makes you get organized. You've got to organize your thoughts and use the steps that you know to apply to that problem and solve it in the most organized, most efficient way that you can. And that's the most important part of algebra, is that it teaches you to think and to solve problems the most efficient way. It's not that you're going to see a problem like this again 25 years from now, but you are going to have problems that you're going to face every single day, and you want to be able to solve those the fastest way, the most efficient way. You don't want to spend your whole life struggling through all kinds of different problems. I mean, Jesus even said it, in this world you will have trouble. So it's up to you to use the brain that God gave you and to develop it and develop good thinking and problem-solving skills. So let's go ahead and do this problem, and let's just start and look and see what the innermost set of parentheses is on this problem. And that would be in the 6 plus 5 and the 2 minus 1. Those are the innermost sets of parentheses. So let's just rewrite this problem and keep up with all of the different brackets and braces and parentheses. Rewrite all of them down except for the ones that you're working on. And so we have 6 plus 5, that would be 11. And I can put parentheses around that because I'm going to be doing multiplication. And then 2 minus 1, that's just 1, so 11 times 1. Then add the plus 1 on there at the end and the brace. Now, let's go ahead and keep working the innermost set. And so we have 11 times 1 is just 11, plus 1. Now we can get rid of the bracket, because we can do negative 2 times 11, that would be negative 22, plus 1. And now we can work on what's inside the braces. That would just give us a negative 21. And now we can finish. We just have a multiplication left. 4 times a negative 21 would be a negative 84. And so we've worked that problem vertically. We've kept up with all of our brackets and braces and parentheses, and that helps us to stay organized. As you get more proficient at these problems, you can do more of them in your head and less on paper. But it's a good idea to write out as much as you can, because there's a lot of places that you can skip a step or forget to add something back in, and you just make a careless mistake. All these problems are is basic operations: multiplication, addition, division, subtraction, stuff you've been doing for several years now. The thing that makes it challenging is you just have to stay more organized with your problem solving. Let's do another one, and again, let's just start working on the innermost sets of parentheses here. And so that would be inside the 4 minus 9. So we'll do that operation first. Rewrite everything else though. And that would give us a negative 5 there. Okay, so then we can work on that now. The 6 minus 5, so we'd have 3 times 1 minus 11. And so now we have negative 4. And now we can do 3 times 1 in our head. That's 3 minus 11 is negative 8. And we have one more operation to go. A multiplication of negative 4 times negative 8 would be a positive 32. So again, we did our innermost sets of parentheses first, and then we just kind of broke it down as we went, did the first set, did the second set, then did the last set of parentheses. Anytime we had multiplication and addition inside the parentheses, we did the multiplication first, then the algebraic addition part. Let's do one more with multiple symbols of inclusion. And this is a fraction, so we need to do the numerator first, then the denominator. Let's work on the numerator first, and let's just rewrite that over here to the left. -2, then a bracket, and then we need to do the 3 minus 5 that's inside those parentheses, and that's -2. We can just do that multiplication in our head. -2 times 7 is a -14 plus 4. And then we can simplify this. -2 times 10, or -10, because we have -14 plus 4. Then do that multiplication. That would be a positive 20. Now, that might have seemed a little strange with that 7 on the end there that I'm circling, but that was multiplication there because there was no plus or minus sign in between that last parenthesis on the right and the number. So that is an indication of multiplication. So our numerator here is 20. Now let's work on the denominator. We have parentheses there, 6 minus 2, so we do that first. That's 4. And then we have a -3. Now, is that times -3, or do we add a -3? Well, remember, there's a plus or minus sign in between the symbol and the number. There's a plus or minus sign. There's a minus sign there. So that means that that would be algebraic addition. So we do 4 plus a -3, so that would be 1. And so the denominator is 1, and so our answer is just 20. Well, in part B of this lesson, it's on order of operations and a little bit more about it. We haven't really talked about division yet, and it's the same as multiplication. If you have multiplication or division, you do those first, and then you do algebraic addition. So remember, multiplication is like the inverse of division. So they are kind of related there. So you would expect both of those to be done first in terms of operations in a problem, then algebraic addition is second. So look at practice problem D, and let's just go ahead and do that one. We see our multiplication there, 3 times 2, so we would do that first. Then we have a plus sign, and then we have a division, 6 divided by a -3. That would give us a -2. And then we have plus 5 on the end. Now let's go ahead and continue with addition. That's all we have left. So we have 6 plus a -2 would be 4 plus 5 is equal to 9. So as far as order of operations, just remember what I have there in red. First is multiplication and division. Second is algebraic addition. The last part of this lesson is on products of signed numbers. Now in lesson 7 we talked about the concept of opposites, where we would say like the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of 3. That would be equal to a positive 3. One thing I discussed in that lesson was that when you had an even number of negative signs, your answer would be positive. When you have an odd number of negative signs, your answer would be negative. And then in lesson 9, we applied that to multiplying numbers that have signs on them. And we found that if you had a negative times a negative, that would yield a positive result. Or if you had opposite signs, negative times a positive, that would yield a negative result. And combining those two ideas, that's kind of what we're going to do in this lesson. When you have more than 2 factors multiplied together, you just look at all of their signs. You can combine them all up, and if you had, say you had 7 factors and all of them were negative factors, you'd have an odd number of negative factors, so your answer would be negative. Say you had a problem with 6 factors and all of them were negative factors. You have an even number of factors there, so your answer would be positive. So if you understand that concept, you can simplify a lot of problems. For example, look at practice problem E here. There are 3 negative signs in there, and there's 4 factors. So there's an odd number of negative signs. So we know that our answer is going to be negative. So just go ahead and you could put a negative sign out front and then multiply in pairs. 2 times 3 is 6. Don't worry about the signs because you've already taken care of that. 5 times 2 is 10. And so your answer is negative 60. Now you could do it the other way. You could just say negative 2 times negative 3, and you know that's positive 6, and then multiply negative 5 times 2, and you know that's negative 10, and you'd be doing 6 times negative 10 is negative 60. Or you could do it just like I have, and just shift that negative sign, move it out, because you know that you have an odd number of negative factors, so your answer will be negative. Let's go ahead and do one more problem. Look at practice problem F. All I want you to do there, I don't want you to do that multiplication and tell me what the answer is. I just want you to tell me, is that answer going to be positive or negative? Well, just look at your factors there. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 factors. How many negative signs do you have, though, or negative factors? You have 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 4 negative factors, so that's an even number. So that means your answer will be positive. So when you have an even number of negative factors, the answer will be positive. If you have an odd number of negative factors, the answer will be negative. We've proven that before with our concept of opposites in Lesson 7, and then also working with sign numbers in Lesson 9. This rule that we're learning here is basically a shortcut based on what you already know. Okay, well that's all for Lesson 13.